Hi, I'm Curious Cass, and this is Curiosity Junkie. I'm on a mission to explore and share ways to manage, soothe, and understand trauma and the anxiety it creates. Because anxiety, over time, can create some pretty serious health issues. And if you're like me, you want to live a long and healthy life. Today's guest is a Yoga Alliance certified teacher in Kundalini. He became fully immersed in the 60s and developed a 5-year meth addiction, which he quit cold turkey, and then it took him almost 20 years to clear his head. He graduated from Brooklyn Law School and had a career in the natural foods industry as an executive sales manager. For many years, he fell into the numbing practice of spiritual bypassing. That is, until he found therapy. Somatic therapy, he says, changed his life. Today, he teaches yoga his way, connecting the heart, breath, and body. Please welcome Gurudhan. Hi, Gurudhan. Thanks for joining the podcast.
My pleasure. Very happy to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm so excited to have you on. I think we just kind of dive in and talk about what it was like being you as a child.
Oh my goodness. Do you have 12 hours?
No.
Let me say this. I explored my childhood enough with my therapist so that I could condense it pretty clearly at this point.
I love it. All right.
Thank you.
Let's do the condensed version.
So, here's the big thing about my first 7 years of my life. I don't remember my parents, which is fairly significant. I mean, I know they were there. I mean, I have pictures, but I cannot remember my parents. And again, I only came to this realization through my 3.5 years of therapy, which was just, that was starting in 2015. But I came to realize that something happened where I blanked it all out. And all I really remember in my first 3 to 4 years of my life is a lot of crying, whether it was in my crib when I was much younger or in my room as I was, a toddler. But that's my preeminent memories of my childhood. So I realized much later on that I took that missing piece of my parents and the rejection that it kind of came into me about, and I took it and turned it around that it must be all my fault, which I found out also was fairly normal,
yes,
even though it's abnormal, and turned it around and made choices for my own survival at that young age based upon those emotions that were running through me of, I must be a bad person. And I became a people pleaser later on, even at a young age of 7, 8, 10 years old, because I didn't want anybody to reject me, right. and have that, whether it was the shame, the guilt, or, the vulnerability of that. So my childhood, I grew up with a father that was a World War II veteran, 4 years fighting. Previous to that, he was 20 years old when the Depression began in this country. Wow. So for him, emotionally, he pretty much was non-expressive emotionally, other than towards me expressing anger. And I knew early on that I was a super sensitive kid. Yeah. It was only, again, much later on that I realized I was a super sensitive adult, and I needed to own that. It was actually a strength, even though I felt it was a weakness. It was certainly a weakness growing up, because my father, based upon his experiences, didn't think I was manly enough, especially when I cried. So catch this. I stopped crying when I was 12.
Oh my.
Because if I cried, I would have one reaction from Dad, right, which was abusive. And if I didn't cry, I wouldn't get that. Simple as that.
Right.
So I'm kind of telling you early on stuff here. So Cassie, the next time I cried was 2.5 years ago.
Oh my goodness.
Exactly. How's that for holding things in?
Wow. Okay, so I'm just like, wow. And like if you think about it, at the time, your dad's probably dealing with a lot of his own PTSD and all
Yeah.
of that kind of stuff. And then you're trapping all of this energy that needs to be released inside your body. So you're building up stuff. Yeah.
Mm.
Oh, big.
And in the culture that I grew up in, I was born in the year 1948. So in the culture that I was being raised in was basically to suck it up, don't emote, and there was certainly not from the parents a learning of how to gain emotional skills, developmental skills to express yourself and articulate yourself emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
So I just was pretty shut down emotionally.
Yeah.
Until I wasn't, but that was a long time.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
my childhood, he was my release on my childhood. Here's what made me happy.
Yeah.
Sports.
Mm.
I was always extremely athletic. I was always the captain of whatever team I was on. On the sports field, I could express myself. I was emoting, but once I got off of it, I was super shy, afraid to express myself because again, it's that I was afraid that I'd be judged and rejected, but at least it was one side I could release on the sports field, and I had a mother who was kind.
Yes.
Even though it's like certainly wasn't coming to my rescue, quote unquote, in the anger, abusive stuff that I was experiencing.
Right. Yeah. She's probably just doing the let me not draw too much attention to me or you in front of your dad because, if she babies you or comforts you, she probably gets a little what for as well, as do you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: my father he basically never drank.
Mm.
He wasn't a drinker. It wasn't like he was, tamping down all of his emotions via alcohol or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, no, I mean, he just wasn't. He did help me with homework. I mean, he took me to baseball games, but I also got the other stick of it.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay. And there was some things that I saw. I was like, it was like he was telling me to do things, but not following them.
Mm.
He was a strict disciplinarian. And he wanted me to be strict with my discipline. And by the way, I realized through therapy that I actually had the perfect father.
Oh.
Here's why. He gave me clear examples of everything that I never, ever wanted to do to myself or somebody else.
Mm.
And he also gave me clear examples that I emulate to this day. I have his discipline. I am a good yogi because for whatever reason, that guy, my father, was a disciplined person.
Mm.
I emulate that.
Yes. Yes. And that's a great message because so many people get caught up in, and I don't want to say the blaming of the parent, but when we look back as we're adults and we look back on our childhood, we kind of go, well, that could have been way different. But I think if we can accept them as flawed humans, and those are the things I don't want to emulate, like you said, there are things there that you're teaching me that I don't want to do. And here are the things that I can take. Maybe it's values, maybe it's, something that you're taking that you see. I do it too. I see a lot of my parents in me, and there are things that I love about that. And then there are some of those other little things that I go, oh, I did get that too.
It wasn't until 2019 that I came to the conclusion that he was the perfect father for me.
Wow. Yeah.
Again, that's a long journey.
Yes.
So he passed away at the age of 93. By the way, my mother's still alive at 100.
Wow.
Yeah, I've got good genes. So my father passed away at 93. So, I have two sisters. Everybody came, everybody's there for the funeral, obviously, nieces, spouses, all this other stuff. There was a big circle the night before the funeral. And the rabbi is asking everybody around the circle, one by one, do you want to say something as part of the eulogy at the funeral the next day? And for whatever reason, they went around in the circle. I was the last person to speak.
Oh, wow.
And I already knew what I was going to say. I could have been the first, but I was the last. And I said to that rabbi, no, I do not want to say anything. And here's why. I knew that the people around that circle were probably, and they confirmed this, some of them confirmed it, that I was too distraught at the death of my father. I was the eldest child. I was the only son.
Mm-hmm.
And I was too distraught to say anything. Well, I was too distraught to say anything because if I said something, what I had no control over was that there was risk if I said something that I would regret what I was going to say. That's why I did not say anything. It wasn't because I was distraught about the loss. In one sense, yes, but my prevailing emotion was do not say anything because you're probably going to say something that is going to be very embarrassing.
Right. Yes. Well,
because I still hadn't reconciled with my father at that.
Right. But that's huge in that you could keep yourself from saying anything. Like you chose silence. That's a big step.
Well, remember, I've been practicing yoga since 1971.
Yes.
And here's the thing, not just practicing yoga, I later came to understand I had also mastered the practice of spiritual bypassing.
Mm-mm. Oh, I like that. I love that term.
Well, the author of the book called Spiritual Bypassing, written in 2010, and the author was Robert Augustus Masters. The definition of spiritual bypassing is the practice and the belief of avoiding at all costs painful emotions, unhealed wounds, and going to get the developmental skills to actually deal with those.
Oh, okay. Yes. I'm an expert in spiritual bypassing.
I think we were both masters of that.
Oh my goodness.
Which we'll get into. I know in the previous talk, we will get into how the universe stopped me from practicing that in 2010.
Yeah. And I think it's so important to share childhood and what it is that kind of creates the world and our mindset and our experiences that make us make the decisions. Our brain thinks for us. Its goal is to protect us. So it takes previous information, experiences, and bases future decisions on that. And it does that all kind of on its own, unless we can kind of get in touch with it and begin to try to control it. So I don't even know if we ever do control it.
Well, we can manage it better. Let me say this. Because here's the thing. There are two, look, we are time travelers. We go into the past, we go into the future.
Yes.
And what prevents us from being present with our presence in the present moment is past and future stuff. The past is not reconciling our grievances with those past events that have hurt us. And the future is wishing that there is going to be some person, place, event that's going to make our life happier.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Right on the nose. I love that. Well, I do want to circle back to, okay, so growing up, a little intense, learning to kind of shut down your emotions because that brings a visceral reaction from a parent.
I survived. That way.
You survived that. And then childhood, you kind of a teen of the 60s, or what were you in the 60s? Because that's an experimental time with psychedelics and drugs and love and like all of it. I just think of it as great hippie age.
The answer to that question is yes. So I started, smoking marijuana, etc., in 1966.
Okay, yeah.
And I had 5 very intensive drug years.
Mm.
Graduating, escalating the drug. Because, look, marijuana, blah, 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 fine, it relaxed me. It certainly, opened up my mind to other possibility. And, but I still had all of this anxiety in me. Look, I'm a fan of Dr. Gabor Mate, Brene Brown, all those, those people.
Yes.
But Dr. Gabor Mate, 2 basic needs of humans is connection and authenticity. And I had no connection, and I certainly wasn't being my authentic self.
Mm.
So even though the marijuana stuff relaxed me, I was still anxious, the foot tapping, all that kind of stuff.
Oh my goodness, yes.
The eczema on the skin, all the nice representations of anxiety. The not connecting. So finally, I did do psychedelics.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. Today there's a trend for microdosing.
Yes.
Which I'm against, except for people in deep need. But my inside joke was back then, me and my friends, we only macro dosed.
Right. Right.
But
Did you have any like great experiences with that? Or I don't even know if you were aware or open to it at that point because you're young and you're just experimenting and maybe being a little crazy. But did you have anything that kind of opened up the mind or the heart or
yes,
that?
definitely. When I got relaxed, my heart opened up because I could relax. I was talking more effusively, a little bit more emoting, but still being careful not to let those deep, shameful emotions based on my early childhood out at all. I was, I was about 10% out there, 15% out there. But yes, I saw the possibility, even though I wasn't taking the possibility.
Right.
And certainly with psychedelics, there were other spheres of reality that I experienced, but I also was afraid of it because I didn't know where that was going to take me. And I was just like, no, I'm not going there. So I kind of stopped the psychedelics after a while. Mm-hmm. And to deal with my anxiety, I went to the next big level of drug usage, which was methamphetamines.
Wow.
And that's a killer drug.
Yes.
So I was into that for about a year. And that year, finally, this is now in 1970, where I was waiting for a friend of mine. We were going to go to this rock concert in New York City. Mm-hmm. And I was waiting across the street from the rock concert venue. And this voice started speaking to me while I was waiting.
Oh, wow.
That was the first time I ever heard that kind of a voice. Little did I know it was my deep intuitive self speaking. I'm very used to that voice now. The voice said, there's 2 guys across the street. You see them? I said, yeah, you know them. I said to the voice, I don't. Look again. I said, I still don't know them. And then the voice said to me, it takes one to know one.
Oh.
And I looked at those 2 guys again. And I said, yeah, I do know them. And they're on methamphetamines, same as me. So the voice paused and then said, those 2 guys across the street, they're going to die in a year because of their drug use. And that kind of like put me up straight.
Wow.
And then the voice said very gently to me, and so are you. The next day, cold turkey, stopped everything. 9 months later, yoga found me.
Wow.
That voice scared the heck out of me. Yes. I mean, I was really, really frightened.
Yeah. And I was thinking, you heard it more importantly, you listened to what it said, like you deeply heard it because it did change everything in you. Sometimes we ignore that little voice and don't really listen to what it's trying to tell us or guide us to. Wow.
Bottom line, I did listen. I mean, now, as me being me now, I kind of have an inkling that the values that my parents instilled in me played a role in me listening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Definitely.
I,
Okay, so you kind of start to shift there in that
yes.
year, like clean up. Did you? I'm curious too because I think addiction is a lot of times we're numbing something. We're trying to fill that hole when we're doing the things. The numbing. I call it a numbing. Whether it's social media, food, excuse me, whether it's social media, food, TV, drugs, alcohol, whatever it is.
Overspending, whatever.
Yes, all of it. That's all part of I'm just numbing this pain inside of me because I don't know what it is. I'm afraid to address it. Emotions are going to come up. Ugh, shut it down. Yeah.
That's exactly why was involved with drugs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So you get cleaned up, cold turkey. Wow. That's impressive. Year, 9 months, you said? And then you
Yeah,
found
9 months.
yoga.
9 months.
How did you find yoga? How does it end up in front of you?
So here's the thing. Humans do not find yoga. Look, yoga is a subset of a spiritual practice. Could be journaling. It could be, walking in nature. It could be going to the beach and listening to the sounds of the waves coming in. These are all subsets of a spiritual practice. And my definition of a spiritual practice is anything that changes the breath from automatic and shallow, scattered breathing to deeper, rhythmic, expansive breaths. So yoga finds us, and it finds us when the human is ready to open.
Yes.
So, but on the earth plane, oh, okay, I heard it from an advertisement. I had a friend going to class, but for me, I was working in Maryland in 1971 for the Xerox Corporation,
Mm.
and this guy walks in, all white clothes, ponytail, and I was like, "Whoa, who's that?" So we became friends, and he started talking to me about the yoga stuff. In 1971, how many people were doing yoga? He had just gotten back from India, and then he says, "Would you like to do yoga? We do it at my friend's health food store." I mean, like, how many health food stores were there in 1971?
Wow. Yeah.
So
And
he
it's
said,
yoga in a health food store.
"Yeah." Before he said, sure. I said, "Sure." He said, "Yeah, let's do it. We're going to do it tomorrow at 4:30." So we worked together. So so I said at the end of the day, I said, "Look, just give me the directions because I just want to bring the clothes. I'll be ready after work tomorrow at 4:30 to do this." He says, "What are you talking about?" You said 4:30.
Yeah.
He says, "Yeah, I did say 4:30." He says, "Well, after work, I want to be able to know how to get." He says, "What are you talking about?" I said, 4:30. And he said, "Yeah, 4:30 tomorrow morning."
Oh, wow.
Even back then, again, parental values. I said I was going to go. I had made a commitment. I was going to follow my commitment. So I am not a morning person then. So I get up, I go do the thing, and I loved it.
Mm.
And then I continued day after day, week after week, month after month. This went on for like 3 months or 4 months. I was getting up every day. Now, the thing was, I was also detoxing
Mm.
heavily. So if somebody said in the middle of the afternoon, "Can you just list all the things you did at 4:30 in the morning?" And somebody said, "Here's $10,000 if you can remember." I could never remember what we did. I had too much stuff coming out of me to figure it out.
Mm.
But here's the other thing. Those 5 years of drug experience took me 20 years to clear my head.
Wow.
And how do I know it was 20 years? Only in hindsight did I realize this, because that's when I actually started a career. I went to law school. I graduated law school. I practiced law for a year. But, law wasn't for me, but it took me 20 years to clear my head. And then in 1991, I started a career.
Mm-hmm. So do you feel like it was more because they talk about like brain fog and stuff like that. Do you feel like it was that, like just no real deep clarity? Because obviously you're still functioning, you're going to put yourself through law school and all of that. So you can think, but there's some kind of disconnect to like what was really happening in life or what?
Yeah, there was a disconnect. You know, yeah. Look, I can remember, reading law school stuff and passing the tests, right?
Yeah.
But I couldn't remember what I did during the morning for yoga.
Wow.
It's that kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
which means I really wasn't fully present a lot of the time. I was doing things rotely.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, on my brain cells still work because I went, I went to law school, finished, passed the bar exam, but then I couldn't remember what I was doing in the afternoon, what I did in the morning.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I was functioning, but I was still avoiding
Mm.
emoting. But here's the other thing that I now know: what drugs do. Look, you go in for a procedure, like even a minor procedure, you get anesthesia. It takes you a little bit of time to actually recover fully from the anesthesia. Even like a dental thing, they're shooting you with that, Novocaine or whatever it is. It takes a while to clear your head.
Yes.
That's the kind of stuff that I was talking about, because what that the chemicals in the drugs, they anesthetize the nerves along the spinal column. So when you're doing drugs, sure, you get relaxed because your nervous system is not there with you.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, it opens up your pituitary gland, the seat of your intuition. Yeah, but and you can get these visions and clarity. But you know what? We're on the earth plane to heal. To do anything about our vision and clarity, guess what? You need a nervous system. And my nerves were pretty adversely affected from all of the actual chemical numbing that I did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you think about kind of that first time you went to yoga class, obviously something there was something there for you. Did you or do you remember having like a deep connection to it, or what was it that made you go,
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
I'm going to get up at 4:30 every day and I'm not a morning person.
Very first yoga class. You do the exercises, then they put you in relaxation on your back.
Okay, yeah.
I went out of my body immediately. I mean, I knew what it was to be out of my body because I was out of my body doing drugs.
Right.
I knew the sensation, but this was natural.
Wow.
And I don't know how long that relaxation on the back was, but what I did know was I went to some other out of body place in some other galaxy, and yeah, I had an out of body experience.
Mm,
And as spiritual beings having an earthly experience, we need some out of body experiences naturally
mm-hmm.
via relaxations after yoga exercises, after just closing your eyes and you're at the beach listening to the tides go in and out. You're in the woods hearing the wind in the trees going back and forth. These get you into other places besides your body so
Mm-hmm.
that you can understand you are from a place not of this earth.
Mm-hmm.
And all those experiences are part of our healing process.
Yes. Yes.
As Marianne Williamson said,
Yeah.
everybody on this planet, every human, is here to continue our healing processes, except most people do not know that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I'm going to say not everyone comes to a moment in life where they go, I need to start, I need something different, something there's got to be something else out there, or this isn't working anymore, or whatever it is, or a rock bottom moment. Not everyone has that. And they just like live right here, high, future, past, bouncing between constantly.
Right.
But I remember, and you've talked about this, like it could be journaling, it could be a walk in nature. It could be, there are a lot of things that like get the mind and body to the present moment. And it was
Correct.
for me, it was that taking the moment to every morning, get up, journal, listen to calm music, recite my mantras or affirmations, and just journal every single day. And it was amazing how it just slowed everything down in my life. Because like you, same thing, jittery leg, always going, feeling anxious. I'm running from something. What? I don't know. Turns out
You,
nothing except myself.
you said something very important.
Yeah.
Slowing life down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it did for me. And, I still to this day, I mean, I run on an anxious full speed momentum, and I know I can slow things down. I've done it before. And just having that daily practice, I don't have it like I used to. And I can tell it creates a little, I call it wobbly, makes me feel unstable when I'm not in that great routine, connecting, always kind of like coming back to right here, right now to slow things down. So I know when I'm out of whack, and I know when I need to get back to a good, healthy practice. Yeah. But some people never experience it, and they never know it, and they're never open to it. And that's okay too. It's not their time yet, but it'll come.
Exactly. Right. Well, what you just said in one word is you're aware.
Yes. Yeah.
It's awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's kind of a buzzword,
I
but
know.
it's like Brene Brown doesn't like to use, like mindfulness or whatever. Her phrase is, you're paying attention. I'm paying attention.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that paying attention phrase.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Okay. So you found yoga, the practice.
Yoga found me. Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Yes. So Kundalini was the type of yoga
Yes.
that found you.
Yes.
And let's talk about how you really connected with that, became a big part of that community.
I did. Yes. So, I was like, I needed to feel part of a community. I certainly had no community my whole life, really. Now, usually, you think family is your community and stuff like that, but I never really connected deeply with that. So I was really yearning for a community, and then that Kundalini community, I felt that okay, this is safety, this is supportive, this is stabilizing for me. So, and it also gave me time to do my detoxification thing. And I knew I needed time. But again, but the Kundalini community was, there was a overarching authoritarian figure that was at the head of that. So when I met him for the first time, I'm not going to mention names or anything like that.
Right.
But here's what I said. You're my teacher. Do whatever you want with me. That was like old school stuff. Mm-hmm. And in hindsight, that wasn't very healthy for me.
Right.
Because when I said that, I basically gave up my power, gave up looking around, the outer stage and seeing what was going on behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. I didn't even want to either. I said, just gave myself up because I wasn't yet ready to fully embrace my own emotional pain. I wasn't looking for anything other than, can somebody please fix me?
Right. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So I didn't start questioning that authoritarian head or the organization's, rules and regulations till probably the mid 90s. That was a long time. Mm-hmm. And I rose up through the systems that were incorporated in that community organization.
Right.
And, I had positions of authority. I started my career. That was the career in 1991. I became the head of sales in this tea company that became famous, that I was part of the executive team and everything else, and became a multi-million dollar company because of our efforts and stuff like that. But there came a day where I questioned the authority figure. That wasn't fun. And then later on, he had passed away. Me and a small team of people, we started questioning the whole overall organizational rules. And, you get into that kind of a community, you question the rules. Eventually, you're not going to really change the rules. You're going to have to leave. And that's what happened.
Wow.
And it was ugly. And there was a lawsuit and there was a settlement. And after being in that community for 40 years, lead teacher trainer, all those things, I involuntarily left.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know what the heck was going on, other than it was very traumatizing for me. And only through therapy did I have come to some conclusions, but I didn't start my therapy until the beginning of 2015. This stuff was going on in 2010, 2011, and 2012. At the end of 2012 was when I left completely. And that was a huge, again, I was in that community. I had my routines. I had friends. I had positions of authority. I mean, I basically had established my life, except I was still practicing spiritual bypassing.
You were just like you said, you just basically handed it over to the community and the leader, like, okay, guide me, tell me what to do. I'm here to do it. Yeah.
And look, the general, how should I say, template for a day was, get up and do your yoga practice, whatever your busyness is during the day. When you finish with your day, fine, you got a family to go, to contend with and everything else. But even in the evening, do selfless service. Weekends, do some selfless service. So there was never really an advocacy of an encouragement to work on those deep-seated, painful emotions and unhealed wounds.
Yes.
I wasn't certainly encouraged.
Yeah. And that's important. I mean, that's a big piece. That's the only way you're going to heal, is to get in touch with and start diving deep into that. Okay, so everything's kind of falling apart. 2010, 11, 12, you're kind of, I'm going to use this big term, losing everything. This community, all friends, probably, I'm assuming there's a big disconnect.
Correct.
Separation. Yeah.
That's understating the big disconnect.
Yeah.
I mean, this is after 40 years in that community.
Yeah. That's
where communities taken away, jobs taken away, those are big things.
Yes. So what happens next? Like, this is all, life is slowly falling apart for you. I would think it would be very tempting to go right back into like a drug situation or a numbing, like, I've never healed, so let me just numb again.
Well, here's what happened first that I was experiencing. I was experiencing severe anxiety attacks. I mean, I was involved with lots of lawyers, lawsuits, threats, all these various things. And I definitely got PTSD. I didn't even know what PTSD was until later on, when I started to explain to my therapist, like, this is what I was experiencing. And I wasn't telling anybody about it. I was doubling over with anxiety attacks multiple times a day. And I wasn't showing anybody that in my immediate circle. And I certainly wasn't talking about it.
Yeah. So you're still shut down, hiding emotions, covering it all up, deeper level.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that translated over too, because of the intensity of what was going on in my individual life. It brought up what the already disconnect in my marriage was, but it brought it up even more because of what was going on with the other thing. Yeah. So I had a community, huge disconnect. I was having the marital, big, huge disconnect. those are two big things to contend with almost simultaneously.
Yeah.
So, and I had nobody to turn to. In my entire life, until I got to my therapist, and I told my therapist this the very first session. I said, because my therapist and I bonded almost immediately, and I said, I've had nobody to talk to my entire life about my pain.
Yeah.
So in the middle of 2014, my then wife says, I know what's wrong with you. You have PTSD, and you should go to therapy. And I immediately said, no. How I was brought up with therapy, I come from a family of lawyers and doctors. Okay. And basically, if you went to therapy back in the 70s or 80s, you were basically raising your hand and saying, I'm crazy.
Right. Yes, it's so
and
true.
to be ashamed of that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I said no. 6 months later, the very beginning of 2015, I go back to my then wife and say, I'm ready. I'll take the name. I'll take the name of the person you're recommending. She says, what changed? And I said, you planted a seed, and I had more time and space to think about it. The pain was escalating. It wasn't stagnant at a certain level. It hadn't plateaued. It was escalating. So I go into therapy full of trepidation. And look, my therapist was picking up on that immediately. I told him my anxiety about even going to a therapist and why. And he says, look, all I'm going to do for you is give you different angles to look at things. You're smart enough to figure it out if you can look at it from a different angle. And he was a somatic therapist.
Oh, yeah.
Body. I mean, I didn't know somatic from, whatever else it was. And yes, in hindsight, it was huge, but it was also huge that I could relate to him. And it was also huge that he had experienced for about 3 years in his own life, living in a yogic community, so to speak, and he experienced ups and downs there. He experienced an authoritarian figure. I mean, he could relate to what I was going through. Yes. So I start therapy.
Wonderful. And does it change your life? Is therapy one of those things that for you opened eyes and really made
it changed my life. And because I had rapport with him, so I get to the first session and I said, look, his name was Gregory. I said, Gregory, I have discipline. Let me go back to one thing. So, with all of that PTSD, yes, you had mentioned I could easily have become back to the drug thing and everything else.
Yes.
But I mean, just in terms of my yoga practice, I knew that if I did yoga in the morning every day, and I don't miss a day, every day, I'm going to feel this way. Yeah. If I don't do it, I'm going to feel how I felt during my drug stuff. And there was one day in my drug stuff when I was on methamphetamines, and I was up for 36 hours, and I went to sleep to 36 hours, and I woke up from that experience so depressed, almost suicidally depressed. I have a very strong sensory memory because I'm a super sensitive. I was a super sensitive boy, and I'm a super sensitive adult. I have super sensory memories. Wow. So I could just close my eyes and go back to how I felt after that 36-hour binge. So that stops me. All right. So I go to therapy. The second session, my therapist said, I want to point out something that you're doing. And actually, you've mastered that. And he says, every time the emotions go up the hill and it gets almost to the top of the hill, what you have mastered as a yogi is that in a heartbeat, you can cut off all of the emotion. Mm-hmm. And I looked at him. I said, I'm getting the feeling that's really not good. And he says, absolutely not good. So I started to go, oh my God, what I was doing. And it was such a revelation to me. It was like, I started on that journey to stop that. Period. Yeah. And I also knew, even though I'll use the word hate, I hated opening myself up because I knew the pain that was going to come out. So I said to Gregory, my therapist, I started kidding with him about 3-4 months in. I said, Gregory, I hate you. And I said, it's true, Gregory, I hate you. Because here I am with my yogic discipline, willing to sit here and let you open me up. And I know what's coming. And that's why I hate you, even though I love you.
Right. Yes. Absolutely.
All right. So the second session, I mean, the second session, he also catches this. He says, every time you talk about your genetic father and that spiritual authoritarian guy, either your eyes are going up or your hands, every time you mention your father or the other guy, you're always pointing up. Oh. There's obviously a big hierarchical difference going on here that is accentuating all of your pain, your disconnects, and everything else. We need to work on getting this leveled out here. Wow. Mm-hmm. So 9 months later, I got the spiritual guy leveled out through a lot of work. And then it took another 9 months after that I leveled out my father stuff. Mm. And it was through, somatic bodily experiences. Because what he did with me, and he knew I was a practicing, yoga guy. He says, close your eyes, calm your breath, slow down. And then about 4 or 5 minutes later, he said, and this is the crux of it, how old are you and where are you? Mm-hmm. And then we would go into it. Wow. And I began to understand that a lot of these feelings that I was avoiding today, these are feelings that have traveled with me, that happened when I was 1 year old, 3-year-old, 6 years old. And he would in a very soothing voice, he would say, is this these feelings that are happening now when you're now adult? Or is this being triggered by something that happened to you on 3 years old? And we'd work through it. And he would tell me how to talk to my 3-year-old self. Mm. He would tell me how to hold that 3-year-old boy's hand. He would tell me how to be kind to that person. And he would also train me how to be kind to my present self. Mm-hmm. But we would go into these incidences and to just get the pain out. Right. And here's what he would say to me. All right, so I'm now. So there's one incident that happened with my father. Mm-hmm. So I'm 12 years old, and I'll tell you the incident just in a second. And he would say, "Where are you? What's happening? And how do you feel?" So I'm 12 years old. I'm with my father. I'm in the basement of my house, which was my playroom, the unfinished basement of my house. And my father's at the top of the steps, and he's just yelling and screaming at me. Mm. And his friend was with him because they play, guys play cards together, right? They would rotate houses. Okay, it's my father's turn. And my father's friend is saying to my father, leave the kid alone. Leave the kid alone. Leave the kid alone. Mm-hmm. And he's not leaving me alone. So Gregory, I understand what's happening here. I'm there.
Yeah.
I am in the basement. I am 12 years old, but I've also got my adult self.
Right.
So Gregory leans in, as he usually did, and he'd say, so what are you going to do about that?
Mm. Wow.
So one thing that I did to protect myself from 1977 until 1996, no, 1974 until 1996, I became one of the premier martial artists, fighters in New York City.
Oh.
I did that to protect myself physically, but I also did it that nobody was going to touch me emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in with Gregory, and I'm 12 years old. And I said, Gregory, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to walk up the steps slowly, and I'm going to use my martial arts persona, which I had dropped many years before. I said, I'm going to take my right arm, and I'm just going to gently move my father out of my way so I can get on the same level of the house as he is. And that's exactly what I did. And as soon as I did it, the whole scene vanished. 2 years later, he's the perfect father.
Wow. Wow. I love that. I love that for you. That's beautiful.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But that's the kind of stuff that we were doing. We did it with the spiritual guy. We did this. We did it with that. So
Fantastic.
From therapy, I mean, it opened me up to a whole new world. The world of Brene Brown, the world of Dr. Gabor Mate, the world of Thich Nhat Hanh, the world of Abraham Hicks, the world of, and it changed how I taught yoga. So I was interviewed in 2019, and the interviewer said, well, who are you? I said, I'm going to tell you who I am in order of priority. And there's only three things. I'm human first. I'm a yogi second. I'm a teacher third. And if I can't do my human thing well, I'm certainly not going to do the other two things well.
I love that because I love it when we can all look at each other as human beings. Like we all have that in common. We are all human beings.
In pain and trying to deal with our healing, just trying to heal.
Yeah, 100%. Yes, yeah. I love that. Okay. So at this point, is this kind of when you, because I know your whole thing has led you to creating a different kind of yoga with a breath and heart-centered kind of process
approach.
To it?
Yes.
Yeah, approach. Yeah.
Yes. And so here, number one, there's so many different yogas, and most of them focus on the body, breath in the body. And that's good. Yes. I mean, it's going to relax you. It's going to change your physiology. I explain yoga this way. I explain yoga from the perspective of meridian lines and meridian points and the physiology of breath. And there's plenty of science about that.
Yes.
So I explain yoga in terms of science to get to the end point, which is stillness. The original definition of yoga was sitting still and pausing the breath. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say something now. I'm not going to go into the science of this, but there is science to this. Yeah. So thoughts are generated only on inhales and exhales. You can Google how a thought gets generated. It gets generated by nerves. Yeah. So when you're taking a breath in, it goes into your phrenic nerve in the lungs. It's a nerve thing. Then that nerve is connected to the brainstem, which has 12 pairs of nerves coming out of the brainstem. That electricity goes into your brain. Thoughts get generated. Yeah. When you don't move your diaphragm, if you have either pausing after the breath is held in or pausing after the breath is held out, you're not generating any nerve energy. Therefore, there are no thoughts being generated.
Interesting.
At some point in time, we need as humans to stop the busyness, and all the yoga exercises or whatever, the journaling is just getting us to a place of more quiet. So it increases the probability that we can sit still and connect with our soul and use that connectivity then to calm the heart, quiet the mind, so we can start dealing with life. What life is our unfinished business. Yep. Anything coming into our life story is what we need to pay attention to, because that's our unfinished business. Oh, and that's how I gear my yoga approach. And that's how I created a heart-centered yoga teacher training from all of my experiences, the pain, the this, the that, whatever, my therapeutic experiences, my deep exploration into Brene Brown and all those folks. Yes. And to synthesize the approach, it's all of the technology, whether it's Kundalini yoga and Hatha, and I do both in that training. Okay. Journaling, and you interviewed my friend Brad Wetzler. Yes. Who came in as my expert journaling guy. All of these things, that technological stuff, is just there to increase the probability that on any given day, we believe this one Brene Brown quote more often during that day than not. And that quote is, "I am worthy, as is, right now, no ifs." Because we were trained, almost all of us were trained, that we were small, not enough, and certainly not worthy. Yes. To exist in this physical body as a spiritual person. We were just dumbed down. Yeah. We're in the process now of untraining that.
Oh, wow. How beautiful is that?
Let me say this. Okay, you can call it beautiful. I mean, it's something very practical that is needed to articulate that approach. And if you read Dr. Gabor Mate's most recent book, The Myth of Normal, all 529 pages are basically saying that. Yeah. And he's saying it scientifically, and he's saying it from his deep experience with people who have been in deep trauma and addiction. It's all undoing the trauma of early childhood. And if somebody thinks they didn't have any trauma during their early childhood, they're numbing, in my humble opinion.
Yes, 100%. I completely believe that we all experience some sort of trauma. Some are much greater than others, but you've still got trauma trapped somewhere in your body, mind, wherever it's trapped. Yeah, 100%. We're all flawed. We're all struggling. We're all healing.
So look, yeah, and as the being a human first, I'm just trying to be as open and as emoting as I possibly can. And the technology I'm teaching every day is just giving somebody some hope that they can release and relieve some of these painful emotions and unhealed wounds, and be a more happy and joyful and loving individual.
I love that. So tell us a little bit about how we could find any of your classes. I don't know if you just do in studio. I know you have a studio. I follow you on Instagram. But I don't know if you also offer like other things that people outside of Texas could be a part of.
Yes. I teach at two studios here in Texas, and there are live streaming with the in-person class. Fantastic. So the first studio is flowyogatx.com.
Awesome.
The second studio is Shunya, SHUNIYA, yogacollective.com. Okay. once you go to flowyogatexas.com, shuniyayogacollective.com, look my, Gurudhan, and you'll see schedules of my classes there. And just make sure that I have some that are just in person, but most have the live streaming attached to it. Mm-hmm. And, I have a daily post on my Instagram and Facebook pages, because when I do my classes, I put a quote on the whiteboard, mm-hmm. whether it's Brene Brown, Thich Nhat Hanh, all these different Pema Chodron. So I post the quote. I have a short 30-second reel about my commentaries of the quote. So yeah, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and in those studios, I do a teacher training. I've got one coming up at flowyogatx.com. It's on that website under events, teacher training, and there it is right now.
Yeah, well, I'll put all the links in the description box for those who want to connect, because I do think it's important if you're in that space where you're ready to heal, or even just start taking a deeper dive or having quiet moments. This is a great place to start. And I also want to say thank you, because I love when people can come to that place, work through the trauma. Like you said, we all have it. We've all experienced it. Yours was intense, and it led you down a wild path, it sounds like. And you came out the other side serving others, wanting to create something to help others because of what you had been through and how you found the thing that helped you heal. Those are the stories I love sharing.
Yes. And, I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah. And there's, the other side of that coin is, I actually feel me being the person I am today. Mm-hmm. I am so grateful. It's very precious to me, because as you and I well know, there's just no guarantee that was going to happen that way.
Mm-mm. Absolutely not. Right. Yes. Could have been a whole different life. Yeah. That's why I love that you share the path, because I do think there are a lot of people that start down a path that isn't a healthy one. Maybe it's meth, maybe it's drugs, maybe it's shopping, whatever it is.
Gambling, whatever.
Yes, absolutely. That's what I love about these stories, that there is a way out. You are not stuck there permanently. I can't remember who has said this, but everything is temporary. The good days are temporary. The bad days are also temporary. Yeah. This too shall pass.
By the way, this is kind of a very light thing. So I finally got into the Ted Lasso, series on TV. So basically, Ted Lasso is saying, everybody's experiencing hardships and trauma around them, and his thing. He says, just be a monarch butterfly. They have 10-second memories, and then they go around and they're just bright and butterflying again.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that.
But our memories there's a difference between pain and suffering. Pain is what happens during the event. Suffering is the mind playing that pain over and over and over again, which stops us from taking the better road than staying with the bitter pathway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It just keeps you in the past instead of the present. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been such a pleasure, and what a great conversation. Thank you.
Cassie, thank you for, allowing me to be here and telling my story. And again, appreciate it immensely.
Yes, my pleasure. Thank you. And to everyone out there, thanks for tuning in and listening. Stay safe and stay curious. I want to personally thank you for taking the time to listen today. Please feel free to share your favorite episodes, and don't forget to hit the subscribe and like buttons. There are a couple of ways you can help support the show. First, take a moment to rate the podcast and leave us a review. Greatly appreciate that. That helps boost the show on all podcast platforms. Second, hit the donate button. I'm Cassie Burton. Thanks again for listening.